Guys, Asa here. Welcome back to another review, and today it's an Amouage Imitation Man. It was released this year, June, and I think it was requested by one of my subscribers, and I'm sorry it's taken this while because it's not an easy scent to understand. So I tried this in autumn. I did not like it, and I've now waited. The temperatures have gone down. It's almost sub-zero, and this fragrance has done a remarkable turnaround in my mind. I almost ignored it, and now it's come back to me and said, listen, I'm an Amouage, I can't be ignored. Honestly fellas, this fragrance is quite a fine fragrance. So let me explain. First of all, let's start with the basics. The bottle design and the packaging gives you an idea what the fragrance is all about. You will see a neon light highlight across the bottle and the packaging. That gives you an idea. This fragrance is basically inspired by nightlife and razzmatazz. So the fragrance was created by Leslie Girard, and I think she's worked in as a team with the creative director of Amouage, Christopher Chong. And this fragrance basically is Christopher Chong's autobiography, literally. Now, Christopher Chong was born in Hong Kong, but he moved to New York. He grew up in New York, and New York is very, very close to his heart. And he's tried to create a fragrance which captures New York from a foreigner's or an immigrant's point of view. When he might have moved to New York, whenever it was, everything must have been a culture shock to him. The nightlife, the subway system, way people talk and behave and socialize, the sound, everything might have been new to him. And he's trying to actually write an autobiography in a bottle. That's what I've read, that's what I think the scent is trying to say as well. So let's start with the construction of the fragrance. Now, this fragrance is very complex. And what I've done is, I've already applied it on my skin about half an hour ago, and I've let it settle down. So I'll tell you the opening. The opening of this fragrance is very bright and jammy. So there are 2 or 3 things here. It's got this amazingly bright and dry citrus scent, which is basically citron fruit. Now, citron fruit literally has no citrus juice in it, and sometimes it's called Buddha's hand. It's got a very thick rind, and it's very, very aromatic, and it literally has no juice in it. No juice. In fact, the rind is basically created as a dish after boiling it in sugar. That's how it's consumed. It also has some medicinal qualities, and I tell you what, this fragrance, understanding this fragrance and testing this fragrance has taught me a thing or two about citron, and I'm enjoying it. So it's basically got a very jammy rose, and I don't like rose, but the way it's been done here, it makes me quite like everything about this fragrance, and I disliked it completely when I tested it. So it's got citron, jammy rose, slight hints of leather, and then comes in another floral, violet. Now, violet flower gives this fragrance slightly powdery and petroleum-like vibe, and also makes it very fuzzy. Now, when you introduce citron, it should be sharp and fresh. It's not. It's sharp, fresh, but fuzzy and floral, yeah, and slightly jammy. Excuse me. There are 2 more notes at the top which makes the fragrance fresh, and that's very interesting because when you put rose in a fragrance, it automatically goes towards dark. It's not. It's jammy, bright, and those 2 notes are pepper and nutmeg. So this is half an hour dry down. So that's the opening. So when it starts off like a fresh floral oriental with some powdery bits. Then a second transition happens, and the second transition is what I'm smelling at the moment, and that is when there's a brief introduction of leather which will stay. Yeah, so leather comes into play. So imagine Christopher Chong enjoying New York's nightlife. He would have barged into these night clubs in the 70s or 80s, and what would he have smelt? The scents of 80s. Powdery rose, patchouli, leather, some petroleum, maybe because of the fumes coming from the road. So he's trying to create that in a bottle. So second transition is when it actually smells like a proper Oriental with hints of chypre. So it's got leather, it's got castoreum, it's got a bit of patchouli, which I don't smell. It's got a bit of vetiver, I don't smell that. So it's a beautiful floral, leathery floral with hints of powderiness. And the big component here is orris root. So, orris root and violet are creating an accord, which I'll come to a little later, which is why I didn't like it in the first instance. Now, the late dry down is when this fragrance loses most of its floral aspects and turns into this 70s smell of chypre, leather-based chypre. And basically it's very dry and warm. As if you're done with your nightlife and you had sweated a lot, now you're in the open air and you've cooled down a bit, but you're still wearing a leather jacket, you still got a little bit of food, maybe you've consumed a bit of food because this has got a little bit of gourmand aspect. So all in all, there are two transitions, opening, middle and the base. And this fragrance gives you the entire journey. Beautiful. I like it. Very creative. And especially for me who did not like this fragrance when I first tested it in autumn. Now, let's talk about pros and cons. Number one pro, this is return of Amouage. The recent releases of Amouage has been green scents, Bracken Man, Beach Hut Man. And those are very green scents and they will not win over people. What is Amouage famous for? Amouage is famous for, thick, heavy, oriental, woody smokiness. This is not very smoky, but it's got sweet myrrh, and I like sweet myrrh. And it creates that really majestic, mystical, or mysterious, majestic effect in this fragrance. There's a little bit of a story and drama and mystery, but it's a fun scent. It's not serious at all. So number one, return of Amouage. Gold, old classic, Amouage, old style I should say. Amouage, yeah? Rich, thick, multi-layered, complex fragrance. That's number one pro. The second pro of this fragrance is its performance. I got consistently, I've tested about 5 or 6 times, tiny sprays guys, one tiny spray from this 500 decant. Every time I got more than 16 hours. Next shower basically. Another thing is the sillage is phenomenal. I always test my fragrances for sillage because I like sillage. I like my fragrance to have strong sillage. Put it under my shirt, one tiny spray, beautiful wafts whenever I move. And projection, superb projection, at least 2 to 3 hours. Very, very strong. The third pro would be it smells expensive. At the moment, it's about half an hour, 35 minutes dry down. It really smells expensive. The moment you smell it, if you like the scent, you will go on to conclude that you're wearing something expensive. If you don't, if you're put off by it, you will probably say, better miss this. Another thing I like about the fragrances, for expensive fragrances, it's very important to have that balance. And this has that balance. It doesn't go into damp territory or wet territory or boozy territory. It's a balance, neither too sweet, not too sour. Citron makes it sour, but not too sour. Not too damp, not too wet, not too smoky. It's a beautifully balanced fragrance. Very, very nicely constructed, conceived, thought. After all, Christopher Chong's autobiography, right? He's going to be serious about it. You will get that. It's a fragrance on an even keel. Nicely made, smells expensive. Now the downsides. I think the violet flower and the orris mixed with rose create this vinyl record player. Believe it or not, it smells like a vinyl record player. And the first time I sprayed it, the very first spray I sprayed it, that's what put me off straight away. Because, I don't expect myself to smell like a vinyl record player, something very organic, created by humans. I don't want that. I want myself to smell natural, especially when I'm wearing Amouage. So it smells like a record sometimes, especially in hot weather. That's one thing that is going to put you off the first time you try it. Second downside is that this fragrance is not easy to understand. I've tried it 5 or 6 wears. The 6th wear, and I've worn it 7 times, including today. The 6th wear is when I really got hooked to it. and that is when it was sub-zero. Yeah, so it's a cold weather scent. That's the third downside. It's only single weather fragrance. It will not work in any other weather. You'll get that vinyl record player accord. And the fourth downside would be that the fragrance is old-fashioned. Old-fashioned in the sense it's powdery, it's got rose, it's got patchouli, although you don't smell too much patchouli, it's got leather, but its execution is classic French perfumery. So when people smell it, especially women, I don't think you'll get compliments. It smells slightly old-fashioned, but not something that you smell somewhere. Yeah, it might remind you vaguely. For example, briefly, it reminded me in its late dry down of Prada Luna Rosa Black, which has been released this year, because it has that semi-gourmandish flair to it, only in its late dry down. So those are the four downsides, if you like. In terms of any other age groups, okay, I think this is a fun scent. It's a complex, fun scent. So it's above all those things like, you want to wear this to a date or work. I will wear this to a night out. And irrespective of age, if you like to wear something complex, yeah, and you don't really care about compliments, you don't really care about genre, then you have got something here. So this won't become as popular as Jubilation 25 or Reflection or this, that, the other. It won't. But it's not a bad scent. It just takes a lot of wears to understand its fragrance. And if you're a collector, and if you're a serious collector, you will like it. But I don't think it's a full bottle worthy fragrance. So, in summary, marks. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. I was going to give it an 8, but because of its low variability and because of its lack of appeal to masses, I'm going to reduce it to 7. But it's a far better fragrance than 3 or 4 Amouages I've tested recently. Bracken, Beach Heart, Figment. It's far better than them. Far better. It's much more interesting, more complex, more likable. It's a fun scent, which is complex. Hope you like the review, fellas. Take care. Bye-bye.